George Dupuis, D-U-P-U-I-S, Mayor of Erath in Vermilion Parish. We're getting things now because of the storm that we wouldn't have gotten. So we're ahead of the game right now. As far as for the town, that we have gotten grants. We have gotten grants like to elevate our lift stations above flood elevation. All of our lift stations flooded for the storm surge. So we were able to get $275,000 worth of grants to elevate our flood stations above flood elevation. We've got some money coming to us now for long-term recovery money through the federal government, through the LRA, which is what is called as long-term recovery. We're the first phase is $438,000, and that should be this year. And we're going to do some street overlays that were damaged by water damage. And our second phase is $908,000, which is going to be used for infrastructure, most probably more street work and maybe some electrical work. But because of the flood, we have our lift stations that we elevated. We're going to have streets that were damaged by the flood overlaid and repaired, which eventually would have deteriorated anyway, and the money would have been hard to come by. So I mean, that's what I'm saying when I say that we're getting money that we wouldn't have gotten. So I mean, we're much better off because of the flood. It's a hard way to get it though. We've just installed a new generator that's going to, when we have a power outage, we can be able to run City Hall, the post office, police and fire stations, which we didn't have before. We had a generator that could run the lights, but no, on some of them, but no air conditioning. But now we've acquired a generator that's large enough, a brand new generator that we've hooked up. So I mean, we're steadily making progress, and we're adding things that we really needed. When I met Judy, I was in a chair that I couldn't really get up. I was so sick. I just spent a couple of weeks in intensive care in the hospital and came out, and she said, "Look, I'm with Southern Mutual. We're coming to town to help the people." And she said, "You look like one of the people that needs help." I said, "Well, you talk about I need help." I had friends of mine that, when I couldn't do anything, just went over and threw all my furniture and appliances on the side of the road, and my house just set up and molded and mildewed. And you have firsthand experience with that. You and your husband came in and did the test for me, and they offered to come in and help at my home, and they took over and just ran off with it. And I tell you what, I have a beautiful home because of it. My home had to be gutted. The floors had to come out. The walls, the studs in the walls had to come out because we had mold and mildew, and I was in no shape to go back in the house that had anything to do with that kind of business. So and I tell you what, my home is a lot better too. We have that sheetrock and stuff in there that I didn't have before. My utility bill is a lot better. And Rita, the winds weren't that bad. When I got up the next morning, I was hurting terribly. I told my son, I said, let's go take a ride around town, let's assess the damage. So we rode around and looked, and we only had a couple of electrical wires down. I said, "Man, this is a piece of cake." I said, we smoothed it through this hurricane. And I rode over to Delcom. When I got to the red light in Delcom, I looked like a mirage. There was water on the road, and I says, "Trey, I'm seeing things." He said, "No, Daddy, you see water." I said, "Oh my God." I said, "Get back to Erath, there's a storm surge." And we turned around and got back to Erath, went to my house, and we started to pick up furniture. And before we could get 2 or 3 pieces of furniture lifted up, the waters came up in the ditch in front of my house along the railroad tracks, just came up and moved into my yard. And it was looking like watching a movie, The Blob, just moving in on you. And I said, "Let's get to City Hall, that's the highest ground in town." So by the time we got to City Hall, we had water covering the pavement out front, and the winds just kept blowing 40, 50 miles an hour. The surge kept coming in, and the wind kept pushing the water in. It was terrible. I mean, it was just, you just wanted to cry watching this water coming to town, and we were so helpless.